You said you'd met Muhammad Ali. What was that like to be around a man of that aura?
That's one of the best days of my life.
Seriously?
No, not much that beats that.
Yes, welcome to Real Life Boxing. This week's guest, it's Tom Gray from Ring Magazine, the managing editor of the Bible of Boxing, the best publication in the business. Tom Gray, welcome to Real Life.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom. How's things, mate? All right?
All good. Pretty busy, but that's regular. Just trying to stay afloat. Super. And doing well enough so far, man.
How's your family doing?
Pretty good. I've got two kids. Like, the wife goes out to work, and I need to I put them into school and nursery, and then I need to work around it, which is juggling, and it's a challenge, always a challenge. Mm-hmm. And that challenge will be even harder when they go off for the next in 6 weeks.
Summer holidays. Let's just kick it off, mate. Scotland gained an undisputed junior welterweight champion, that man being Josh the Tartan Tornado Taylor.
Yep.
An absolute subliminal performance out in Las Vegas over just 3 weeks ago. Talking about the fight, mate, Larry Merchant once said, drama in the desert. We had it all. We had knockdowns, controversial scorecards, slight dodgy refereeing, drama after the weigh drama after the weigh-in. Just give me your whole thoughts on the fight.
I thought it was an excellent performance by Josh, and listen, Ramirez performed really well. It was competitive. I thought Josh was the clear winner. You touched on the scorecards. I didn't buy into the fact that the fight was that close. I definitely didn't. But I know people, Doug Fisher included actually, that had it that close. So the bottom line, I mean, a lot of people were saying after it, myself included, when you're wrapped up in the kind of post-fight hysteria, that Josh would only have got himself a draw without the two knockdowns. But there were two knockdowns. Yes. It's like saying what would happen in a football match if there wasn't any goals. There was two knockdowns, they were world-class knockdowns, and he was a worthy winner. But it was brilliant. It was one of the best moments for Scottish boxing, I think, in history.
Just breaking the fight down, Tom, what were Josh's keys to victory? What did he excel in more than Ramirez on the night to get his hand raised in the end?
I think that Josh moved more in the fight than he had in recent fights. Obviously, we get nothing to see really in the fight against his Thai mandatory, sorry, the name, Apanun Kongsang. If I've got that right, I'll be really proud of myself. But certainly against Prograis and Baranchik, he was engaging in the pocket a lot more. Now, he's still engaged with Ramirez, but that's part of his style. He likes to mix it up. He likes to also take a toll out of his opponent. But I thought he moved more in his speed and his variety. He's got a brilliant boxing brain. He's got all the moves, and that's also backed up. I was speaking to him when I went over to see him. All that natural talent and amateur pedigree and the World Series of Boxing, everything that he did is juxtaposed alongside serious spite, and he's got that in abundance. You know, Ramirez can crack. He still turned around and said that Baranchik is the harder puncher of the two. Said that Prograis doesn't hit as hard as Ramirez did, but Ramirez doesn't have Prograis' slickness and tools. So ultimately, it was one of his biggest challenges. But I think that Josh proved that he was the best junior welterweight in the world when he beat Prograis. To me, he's number one. And he won the Ring Magazine Championship. We believe in having that on the line when it's vacant between the two best, and I think that was the two best. No disrespect to Ramirez, but I think that Josh proved he was the best back then.
Going back to those knockdowns, the 1-6 and the one, especially 1-7, Kenny Bayless gave a very long-standing count. In my eyes, it was around 20 seconds. At the end of the day, Kenny Bayless should be up to Bob Bennett and the Nevada State Athletic Commission on the Monday that fight, and he should sit down and say, Kenny, what are you playing here? Yep. It was an absolute disaster, if you ask me.
I agree with you. My quote on the night was that Bayless had a nightmare. Both knockdowns, I thought the amount of time that Ramirez was given was ridiculous. And yes, Josh prematurely came out his corner, but you know, wiping the gloves, turning round, telling Taylor to get back, wiping the gloves, must have been the cleanest gloves in Las Vegas, right? So, I mean, how long before you're saying it's really, really stupid? It's almost in the second knockdown on the uppercut, Ramirez was badly damaged, and it was almost like the feeling was like we stood around and waited till he was okay to recover, and that's not the way a professional fight should go. If he's not fit, you stop it. Or you certainly give the guy who's just earned the knockdown a chance to follow up and finish.
As the seconds are vital at that level, when you're at that elite level of the game, you've got guys like who are very top and they're very well conditioned. 1 or 2 more seconds in that.
Yeah,
in that
that's all you need. If you're an elite level athlete, that extra couple of seconds is all you need to recover. The time was running out anyway, but I think Josh, you know, give it say 13 seconds or 14 seconds instead of 20 seconds, which you got.
Yes.
If you count from him hitting the deck to the action resuming, could have had a different result. You could have had a stoppage in the 7th round, but we'll never know. Just touching back on Bob Bennett, you're not going to see that because the guy who's got the complaint won the fight.
Yep.
You know, if Josh had lost that fight, or if it was a draw, they'd have made more of a song and dance about it, but they're not going to when Josh gets hand raised in Las Vegas.
I'm putting my fan side on here. I was very disappointed why BT and Sky never picked up the fight. It was an absolute travesty. I'm going to be honest with you, Tom. If that's a matchroom fighter fighting on Sky for the undisputed title, Eddie Hearn has got the Queen ringside, sipping champagne and caviar. Tom, I was very disappointed. Should it have been picked up with BT or Sky?
I spoke to Josh about it. It's on record, and Josh said if it was a fighter south of the border, you're not on Fight TV in the UK. And listen, fighter taking a bit of heat here because automatically be saying it should have been on BT, it should have been on Sky. You're saying what the hell was it doing on Fight? But see, the bottom line is we're lucky Fight was there because who else was taking it, right? Josh basically said, yeah, I believe if I was English, then there'd be more of a song and dance, and that's words from the man himself. And yeah, I think now, to put a positive spin on it, if Josh goes ahead with the Jack Catterall fight, which is what I expect, it's going to be Scotland versus England. Jack's unbeaten, good fighter. As crazy as it sounds, because Jack's probably going to will be a massive underdog. That was a 50-50 battle. The Taylor Catterall fight will be amped up to the heavens, I believe, right? I think either Sky or BT or someone will get that, and all the hoopla that you should just have had will be on a fight when Josh is going in against a guy who's maybe 5-1, 6-1 against.
I don't know if you've seen the tweet earlier that Mike Coppinger put out. Top Rank have signed up with Sky going forward.
I did.
Obviously, Josh being a top rank fighter. In my eyes, Josh Taylor is a pay-per-view fighter all day long. He's an absolute tremendous athlete, tremendous fighter. He's got all the attributes to reign at the top of the game. You touched on Jack Catterall there. What do you think will Josh's next move be? Will he stay at 140 or will he dip his toe in welterweight? What do you think will happen next for him?
I spoke to Josh about this because he's making so much history. What we need to remember here is that that's the first undisputed champion from Scotland since Buchanan in 1971, so that's half a century. Ken Buchanan made no defences of that. So, I mean, I'd need to double check, right? But I don't know if a Scotsman, and I'm adding in here like Benny Lynch and Jackie Patterson, right? I don't know if a Scotsman has ever made a defence of an undisputed title in Scotland, right? Or even in the UK. I'd need to check Lynch and Patterson. I know Buchanan definitely didn't because he won it and then immediately was stripped or vacated the WBC version. So the history side of making a title defence, I think, is vital here. Also, I think Josh doesn't owe anyone anything, but he might feel, the guy he is might feel that Jack Catterall did legitimately step aside to allow that fight to take place. And I think Josh will take him on. Plus, even though Jack's going to be the underdog, it's still a super attractive fight because of what Josh has just achieved. His stock will have went up. So I see that fight actually being very, very, highly touted. I don't think Josh needs to run for welterweight. I think he will eventually go to welterweight, but I think you're probably looking at 2022 and maybe the tail end of 2022.
The thing I'd like to say is, have we seen the best Josh Taylor yet? Has he got another 2 or 3 more gears in his arsenal to go up in levels again and tackle the likes of Terence Crawford, guys like that? Do you believe he's another 3 or more gears in there to go up that level?
It's difficult to say because of the level of performance that he's turned in, particularly against Baranchik, Prograis, O'Hara Davis, who's not in that level, but the performance that he turned in that night, I mean, that got Josh into the junior welterweight top 10 at Ring, which is almost unheard of at an embryonic stage of your career. So he has produced, I think, most of his arsenal. Like, I've had people saying to me that he's not ready for Terence Crawford. Well, Josh is at 30, right? In my opinion, Josh is a complete fighter. You're not adding loads and loads to what he's already got. What Ben Davison and the guys will be doing is making subtle adjustments depending on what's in the corner against him. And Josh has got the savvy and the pedigree to make those adjustments, and he's just a terrific fighter. there might be something, coming up that blows your mind. But if you're asking me, I don't think Josh can get better. I think he's brilliant right now. He's top 5 pound for pound in the world according to Ring Magazine. How much better can you get? 5 spots better. He's brilliant. But the likes of Terence Crawford, let's face it, is a very, very, very hard fight. Not just for Josh, for anyone at welterweight or probably even a few junior middleweights. But we'll need to see. But I think Josh is a complete fighter.
Floyd Mayweather lived by the persona, hard work, dedication, prayers and belief in a good team. How vital is it, Tom, to have a great team in your corner when you get to that elite level and gaining all the belts at that level? How vital is it having a good team around you?
Vital. Like it doesn't. There's not much more important than that. And you need to give credit to Shane McGuigan, who was with Josh. I know that there was acrimony when that relationship ended with the McGuigans, but you need to give Shane a lot of credit. You need to give Terry McCormick, Josh's other trainer, severe credit for how Josh has been brought along since he was a kid. And now he's with Ben Davison, and I think Ben is highly touted for a reason. He gets a lot of stick because, let's face it, he just picked up a diamond there, right? I mean, Josh Taylor didn't walk into his gym knowing nothing. But Ben is a brilliant tactician, very relaxed in the corner, and he knows what he's doing. I think some of the detractors, I think they're a bit out of order. I think Ben's a good addition. And listen, we've had 2 fights, a first round knockout and an undisputed title win, so he's on a roll. See, when you said Josh Taylor, he's a very loyal man as well. You just touched on Terry McCormick there, Ben Davison, Lee Wiley, all the guys down there. Yep. I don't know if you've seen the video that Andrew McCart captured on IFL TV after the fight. It was in the dressing room, and you've seen the spiritualist guys and Terry and Josh, a kind of emotional kind of moment. That's 15 years of blood, sweat and tears. Yep. You go back to when Terry used to sneak Josh out the Commonwealth Village to train him, subbing him 20 quid here and there, things like that. That's so much loyalty. You go back all the way, such a great team round about each other. But just touching on something else, Ring Magazine just brought out the pound for pound rankings there, and Josh Taylor jumped into the top 5, and I'm sure he was the last man to do that was Joe Kolzagi back in 2008. That was 13 years ago. Correct. I know this might be a wee bit earlier on in the year, but are we looking at Josh Taylor a prime candidate for Fighter of the Year? We'll just make sure and point out that Kozagi was the last Brit then, right? The last British fighter to be in the top 5. It's early days, mate. But you've seen so many times where you could have like a brilliant win, which Josh has got at the moment. But you've got still coming up, right? You've got Jermell, Charlo, and Castano. You've got Fury, Wilder. Imagine Wilder reversed that, right? Like, I can't see it, but imagine he did. There's so much things can happen in the next 6 or 7 months. He's certainly not done himself any harm, but Canelo, I think, is more likely to get. I think that the Caleb Plant fight will get made. Yeah. So if you've got Canelo beating Billy Joe Saunders unbeaten and taking a title off him, and then beating Plant and taking another title. Canelo's in pole position as well, but Josh is in the running. Let's face it, he's just became undisputed champion. He's off a history-making win. Yep, could be, but we'll need to see. Yeah. If I put the vote in from everyone, will say I'm biased, so I'm used to that.
On to yourself now, Tom. What got you into boxing at such? Was it a young age you came into boxing?
Not as young as you might think. I was actually I was more heavily involved in martial arts, and I was like a Bruce Lee super freak, and I did a bit of competing, and I went to Hong Kong not to compete. I just went there on holiday. That sounds like I was in Bloodsport or something. But I would read a lot of Bruce Lee stuff, and he would reference Muhammad Ali a lot. And in short, I became a Muhammad Ali fan before I was a boxing fan. And then that quickly went on to Sugar Ray Leonard and the rest of the Four Kings. And then at this time, you're probably looking at your early 90s, so it's like Ben and Eubank are around in the British scene. Naz was just getting started on ITV. Oscar De La Hoya was just about to come out. Roy Jones, was fighting as well, and all the great Mexicans. It was just a great time. And if you start getting into the modern game, which was around at that point, you just kind of progress and you just turn around one day and all the champions and everything coming up, and you've got a vested interest. And back then, what I will say was, you and I are discussing how Fight TV ended up picking up Taylor and Ramirez. back in those days, a lot of the big American fights, you didn't get them on here at all. You were sending away to some fella down in Leeds and getting it on bootleg. So that kind of thing, that started. And then if I was good, better watch myself here, get a few lols. If I was good at anything, I could write a bit. And I did media and I did journalism and a bunch of stuff. And ironically, it was probably media I was more interested in, but that changed. And I started covering small hall in the late 90s, early thousands, and that would be like Scott Dixon,
yep,
Gerard and Lawrence Murphy. But at the time, internet's not became mainstream. And there was I contacted Boxing News and they said, look, get a portfolio together, show us what we can do. But I'm young at the time and I'm going out and getting a drink, trying to pull with emphasis on trying, and just kind of lost my way, right? And then by the time I come back, the internet was around, and I actually met Adam Smith and Jim Watt. That'll be Adam Smith getting the blame for something else. But I met Adam and Jim Watt, and we had a boxing conversation. Jeff Powell was there as well, and Adam said, do you do anything with your knowledge in the sport because you communicate with it well? He didn't big me up and say that I was the next AJ Liebling or anything, right? But he just said you communicate well. But I'd been thinking about getting back to writing. This was 2010, Mayweather-Mosley weekend in Las Vegas. And something about him just saying that struck a chord. And I said, right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make an effort, but I'm going to try harder than I did the last time. And that would be, need to check the dates here, so that's May 2010. June 2010, I was writing for Seconds Out. And by the following year, I had a front cover in Boxing News. I was good at getting opportunity or seeking out opportunity, which is really important in the game. And then things kind of progressed from there.
How was your upbringing when you were young, Tom?
Well, I'm from where we are right now. I'm from Motherwell. Good. My mum and dad, they split, but I still had a good relationship with my dad. My mum was an angel, and I had a brilliant set of mates. And that's kind of maintained, but yeah, good upbringing. Yeah, I could have done better at school than I did. I was a late bloomer, and that's an understatement.
You said a minute ago that you at Bell College you were at. You studied journalism, media studies. Was that for a few years there? Yeah.
I was at a college in Motherwell first and can't remember the name of the course, but media was involved, and then went to Bell and was 2 years at Bell. Could have got into third year at university, and I couldn't because I had to bring money in. So I just started working at that point.
What did you do when you left college?
Jobs that I didn't know what to do. For, mainly customer services focused and sales focused, and manager roles where you're not really managing anything. And I was pretty discontent, which was another reason why I decided to go back into trying to get a career going in boxing, because I felt I had more to offer.
How long did that take you, Tom? Because it was kind of your mid-30s till you broke back into the boxing game. What's that, 10 to 15 years?
Yeah. Years, like I'd say well over 10, maybe approaching 15 years before. And there was a period where I was writing about boxing and I was working at the same time, and I had a kid. It's no wonder I'm bald, to be quite honest. I don't feel like I'd have the energy to do that now. Like I really, really don't. But back then, when I'm in my early 30s, I'm fitter for it. Do you know what I mean? Like it didn't bother me doing what I had to do at work, coming in, having my dinner, looking after my son going to bed and working to midnight. I'd done that now, I'd be
done in.
Yeah.
Do you believe that's time you wasted, Tom? Do you wish you had amalgamated your journalism career with your boxing journalism earlier on in your life?
Definitely. And it's something that I speak to my son about, my oldest boy just now, like, get it into your head the direction that you want to go in, because yes, I mean, it's difficult for me to fully regret it because it happened, and there's no point in regretting it, and touch wood, right now I'm in a good position, but it is, would I have rather kicked this off at 22 years old, which would be what, 24 years ago? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you feel back then, Tom, you lacked a bit of drive and ambition?
Just immature. If you're, I was a typical Motherwell, we'll not even say Motherwell, right? We'll just say West of Scotland kid. Like, I wanted to get drunk with get my money,
party,
pay my dues, Yeah, and it was relentless for many years, and it probably went on too long. Again, though, let's say, for example, at 22, I kick off and have a career in boxing journalism. Then you miss all that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of memories in there, and there's a lot of things I'd rather get rid of, but there's also a lot of things that I wouldn't trade in. So yeah, I don't want to say things will happen for a reason, but
yeah,
there would have been a maturity issue with me, young, trying to carry the kind of responsibility I've got now. I could have, and I've been mid-30s was probably, I could probably been doing with maybe 5 years prior to that, I think, if I'm being honest.
What motivates you, Tom?
I love the sport dearly, and I love what I do. And the thing is, I loved that publication before I became involved with it. When I went into a shop, it didn't matter. Like back in the day, magazine days, where it was like Boxing News, Boxing Monthly, Ring Magazine, Boxing Illustrated, World of Boxing, you could spend 25 quid, just picking all them up. But Ring was always the first one I would go for. It was always the first one that the cover would blast off the shelves. So, yeah, I mean, I'm motivated because I love what I do. I don't feel as if I sit in my hands ever. And I've never reached a point where I feel like I can't do any work. My role's completely changed, but the work hasn't been less.
You touched on your family there. What guidance can you give them as they kind of reach that critical age in their life when they're leaving to school to go to university or college, or what advice can you give them?
Kind of touched on it. I think you need to have a focus and a goal in mind. And if you don't have, you can get lost. Like I say, I was very, very, very discontent. And my son, it's early doors. My oldest son's only 8, but he's very, very quick. He's doing brilliant at school. He's physically gifted, and he's got a lot of things going for him. So what I'm going to try and teach him is to get a passion for what he enjoys and pursue that regardless of what he's told. Because a lot of people will turn around and say, I got it. Like when I was trying to get in the door in boxing, people will turn around and tell you you'll not make it, or there won't be enough work, or it will not be sustainable, or you'll last 2 minutes. And you need to be able to kind of believe in yourself and not really listen to other people's opinions.
Would you say it's vital to fulfil your full potential when you're young, Tom?
No, not when you're young. I think in the course of growing, and you're always growing. I think in the course of growing, you need to feel you should hopefully. And can anyone truly fulfill their maximum potential? Probably very few, but I think you need to give it your best shot. I think that's important.
Do you believe you've turned your passion into a dream, Tom?
It's my dream job. I don't sit and think, and I don't lie in moments alone and say to myself that I want to be an astronaut or anything like that. Yeah. I'm doing what I wanted to do from over half my life. Yeah. And it's a great thing, and I'm thankful for it. I never take it for granted. I never take it for granted, and that's important. So when you keep your feet on the ground, I'll have a wind up on Twitter, right? But when it comes to the action and my job, I try to make sure I put in as much hard work as I can.
Tell me how you broke into the boxing media. When did you know you had excelled into that next level? Which story sticks out that you'd done? You went, do you know what? I'm doing okay here.
I think because the transition from when I started back to even starting working with Ring was quite a short period of time. You have hallmark moments. Like I can remember even Boxing News, which it's a rival publication, but Boxing News meant a lot. It's not even a rival publication if you think of it. It's a weekly, but Boxing News is a brilliant magazine, right? And they've been around for longer than Ring has, 100 odd years. And I got a Bernard Hopkins story on the front cover, and I was so lucky with that. I mean, I'd asked Hopkins for an interview on Twitter, live Twitter, not even a direct message, and he said yes, contact, and he gave me the email address on live Twitter. It could have ended up with like thousands of people. I don't know if Hopkins kind of knew that was happening. And I just contacted Swanson, it was at the time, and asked to get this interview. And I can't remember how I found out, but Boxing News were struggling to get him.
Right.
And some mad hatter from Motherwell just phones him random and gets it. And I put a lot of work into that interview because I knew that I had a chance to give it to a big outlet. And I thought it was Triss I was dealing with at the time. And Triss was editor at the time, and I thought Triss was going to stick it, even though it was long. I thought Tris was going to stick it in the middle of the magazine. And I turned up, never went out for a few weeks.
Right.
And Mars was making buttons. And I'm like, where is it? And I was bugging Tris. And then eventually I walked in and it was the front cover, and like the buzz you get, it's like unreal. So that was a standout moment. Ring It for the first time was when Ricky Burns was fighting Kevin Mitchell. I've got that one framed. Aye. Because that was my first story. You know, and then the first time where you get a cover story is a massive moment. That was like Fury, Joshua, Wilder and Parker was my first cover story. I think this is going way back to when Parker would have been champion at the time. Uh-huh. And then I spearheaded the Four Kings issue, and that came out, and like I set up how like the storyline up, and then Doug would come in, make subtle changes, and I would say, can we put this guy on this story? And Doug would say, no, this guy is better, and all that stuff. And then when that comes through, and you know you had such you're such an integral part of that concept, that's a buzz. Getting up to sit just the other day with Josh Taylor and watch the Ramirez fight, and I'm sitting with an undisputed champion, like that, and I've known Josh since he was a kid. I watched Josh spar Ricky Burns when he was in the World Series of Boxing. Yeah. But to be there doing that and get that kind of access, which I'm really thankful for. Josh didn't need to do that, and that's a buzz. And you're trying to get as many things as you possibly can. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Going to Japan to cover an Oid in air, unreal. You're walking about that's one time where like I'm walking about and it felt like I was in a dream. Mm-hmm. Like just an amazing time. So there's been loads of great moments.
Was there a specific way or a moment that changed your life and way of thinking when you'd progressed in boxing? You went, do you know what, I'm going to take things in a different outlook now, that you got the Hopkins interview and you'd spiralled on. Was there a specific moment that changed your way of thinking?
I started thinking like that from the start. On the second time, I just thought, if someone's saying that you communicate well, and at the time there's far less going on, and like there's boxing websites, like Boxing Scene would have been around at the time, Ring TV would have been around at the time. Not as much of the videography thing that ended up kicking off with iFilm TV, with Behind the Gloves and Boxing Social. Yep. Right? And all these guys some of these guys are, I say it all there, but most of them are tremendous. Like Boxing Social and iFilm TV and all those are really good, but there wasn't any of that. That was yet to come around. And I felt as if I could contribute something that wasn't really getting done. Well, I've got an idea of, I don't know boxing as well as a trainer, right? But I know a left jab for a left hook, and I know things in fights. Like I can predict what's going to. I can also make an absolute arse of it, like every other person can. Yeah. But I felt as if there was things I could say that, and I could touch on the technical side of the game, which I did a lot with Josh when I was up seeing him, and editors and people would appreciate having a bit more of a technical outlook. Mm-hmm. I don't always get it right, and I'm not sitting here claiming to be, let me think of some Eddie Furch, right? I'm not, but I've got an eye for the game, and I kind of know what I'm looking at, I think.
Tell me the proudest moment of your boxing journalism career so far.
There's been loads, but I would say that I sat down with Sugar Ray Leonard, and he was just up the road at a hotel. And when I was just getting into boxing at the time, I idolised Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard and Bruce Lee. That was like, not much has changed actually, it's probably still the same. And maybe it's something in your mind, right? Because he's not even fighting anymore, and he must have been, sorry Ray, he must have been approaching the 60. But he still had this kind of like magic dust coming off him. Yeah. And maybe you're seeing that because you have got so much admiration for him. Because I can remember seeing Floyd Mayweather in Las Vegas, and it was the same. Mm-hmm. So it's probably something in your head. But to sit with Sugar Ray Leonard and talk about, I was talking about Bruce Lee with him, and talk about Sugar Ray Robinson and, you know, his thoughts on the game, and like just for you to me away, that would take a lot of beating. Also becoming managing editor at Ring Magazine, which was relatively recent, when you've climbed up that many levels. And a lot of people will say that's the silliest appointment since Donald Trump getting into the White House. Right? What am I meant to do? Am I meant to knock it back? Like, you know, maybe I caught Doug Fisher with one too many glasses of wine in him. But, you know, and sometimes, still to this day, like, I'll go and interview American fighters and it'll all get done by email initially. And then when they come on the phone, they hear the accent, they're like, who are you phoning from? Wait, who are you representing? And I'm like, Austin Trout done it. And I had to like convince them for like 5 minutes. I'm like, look, like, you know, the ring needs to expand out to the UK as well, and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, okay, I'll give you an interview. But he was really shaken up when he heard the West of Scotland lingo. It's brilliant to get to that level, because it's not been the easiest of journeys. And my wife has sacrificed a lot, you know, and because I wasn't always making like big money and whatnot. And
tell me, how did you get in the door at Ring Magazine?
And I'm still not making big money. So. I had the boxing news front cover on Hopkins, and shortly after that, Billy Nelson used to give me access once a week when he was training Ricky in Steps, I think it was at the time. Yeah, Steps. And I'd go up, Ricky's champion at the time, and he'd just relinquished his £130 title to go up to 135, beat, I don't know why I'm trying to do this, Pillis Moses, I think. And then from there was upgraded to full champion. And I'd talk to him about what's changed. You've got an extra £5 to play, which sounds crazy. Like you and I could lose that in a weekend, right? But to a fighter, that's like it's functional fitness. Yeah. He can use that £5. And he would tell me about his diet and told me about like the changes you could make to his strength and conditioning, get a bit extra muscle on. And there was a magazine out, it was a boxing news sister publication called Fighting Fit. I think it was Danny Flexen that was editor at the time. And I pitched it to Danny and said, look, I've got good access. Billy Nelson gives me access to this gym, and I speak to Ricky quite often. And I said I could speak to Billy, I can speak to Ricky, and there was a strength and conditioning guy I could speak to, and I get Shaba Shafiq, great photographer, up, and we went to this Buckingham clinic that Ricky would go to do his strength conditioning. Got a big giant feature on that, and it was like 8 pages, maybe 10, and it was the front cover. And I took the boxing news, Hopkins interview and Ricky, and gave them a ring and said, will you let me write something on Burns Mitchell? Yeah. And it was Michael Rosenthal, it was like became a mentor to me, a terrific writer and a great editor, a great guy. And he doesn't know me at the time though. Luckily we communicated loads on email, didn't need to hear my voice. And he said, yeah, that's quite good, 900 words. Number 1, I'm giving you a tester. Number 2, this is Scotland versus England. We're Ring Magazine, we're not really that interested, right? Probably was the train of thought. So I done that, and that was to get. And then what you need to do after that, I think it's important, is I get Michael from there and Doug as well would pitch things to me. I can't think of any examples, but I can always remember getting assignments where I didn't have the slightest clue. And that's where your research abilities come in, because if you've not got a clue and you need to knock out 2,500 words, I don't care how good you're at writing, you better know how to research or you're done, right? But I didn't knock back one single assignment. I didn't turn around and say, oh, that's too much for me, or I can't get hold of that person. I'll get them. You know, just put your sniffer dog hat on and get them. So
you're the managing editor, Tom. Tremendous achievement. I take my hat off to you. Fantastic, mate.
Thanks, mate.
What other roles do you do at Ring Magazine?
Right, so like I still write for the website, right? So, and I don't need to. I don't think Doug might turn around and say, "Oh, you've not written for a while," but I do that much editing for the website and that much proofing on the magazine, that much work for the magazine, that I don't need to keep my editing head on, or my writing head on as much as I used to. But I mean, I'll do some social media. I'll do some marketing stuff on subscriptions or issues. I also need to assign the other guys in the team in the website. Like, I'll put out a story budget each week, and there's fights coming up, and we'll say like, who can get hold of Shakur Stevenson? And then I'll say, right, who can cover the fight? Have we got someone nearby that can get a press credential? Have we got someone, or if we've not, can we cover from TV? Which we don't like doing as often, but sometimes it's just practical. Yeah. So that takes up, and keeping an eye to make sure that's all getting done. You know, someone might say, I can get this guy, and then they can't. The only thing I ask is, if that's happened, you need to tell me, so that if someone else can get them, we pass it along. And that can be hard to juggle. the staffing side of it. But you know, we've got a solid team that's across, I don't know how many continents, but you know, we mainly get the job done.
The thing I love about the Ring magazine, mate, is the Ring belt. It is the most decorative belt, prestigious belt.
I could have brought one over. You could have displayed it.
It's the hardest one to get in boxing, as you know. There's no bullshit with it. Is it always number 1 versus number 2? Or is there kind of occasion it's maybe 1 versus 3? How does that work?
I think you know the answer to this, and this is a leading question. No, it's predominantly 1 versus 2. The time where it'll be 1 versus 3 is if Doug and I decide that there's no discernible difference. So I need to give you examples now, right? When Anthony Joshua, ring title's vacant, Anthony Joshua fought Joseph Parker, who was number 3. And I put it out at the time. It was a panel was making the decisions on who would fight for vacant titles, and I put it out, and it got poo-pooed because Wilder at that time is at the ultimate strength of his reputation. He's champion, and he's knocking everybody out with a single dig. So to overrule Wilder for Parker, who wasn't accomplished as a champion at the time, right? Had a good win over Andy Ruiz to win the belt, and he'd maybe had there was a fella called Cavanu, I think, and the close decision over Hughie Fury. Can you then say that his reputation as a title holder is superior to that of Wilder? The vote was no, right, at that particular point. Whereas, let me see, a 1 versus 3 that went ahead. Anthony Crawler against Jorge Linares. Linares number 1, and the guy in the middle, Dejan Zlatikanen.
Dejan Zlatikanen, that's right. He beat Ricky, didn't he?
He did. Now at the time, between Zlatikanen and Crawler had the win over Dallas Perez and another brilliant win over Ismael Barroso, and he was an underdog in that fight, and that guy was good and unbeaten. We felt that the gap between Zlatikanen and Crawler at that time was nowhere near what the gap was between Wilder and Parker. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep, 100%.
So that was an occasion where 1 versus 3 went ahead for the vacant belt. Did everyone agree with it? Hell no. But you're going to run into that. But I would caution people to judge Ring magazine less for decisions like that. When you've got vacant belts going on the line with kids that don't even deserve to be in there at all. And I'll give you an example of that, right? Lewis Neri, who just lost recently to Brandon Figueroa, picked up a belt, vacant WBC belt against a kid called Alameda from Mexico. That guy had only engaged in 1 10-rounder in his entire career, right? And he had won split decisions twice, I think, in 8-rounders over journeymen. Why are you fighting for a world title? But people want to turn round and make out like the Ring's making a dodgy decision, having Crawler against Linares. That's insane. Pick your battles, right? Because you know most of the time, and what that led to, Linares beat Crawler. Who beat Linares? Lomachenko took the title off him, right? See if we don't put up Crawler against Linares for the vacant Ring magazine title, Lomachenko never holds it. So you know what I'm saying? 999 times out of 100, we'll get it. You know, we'll get it right. Things will, even if you don't agree with it, things will even out. Same with Callum Smith when he fought George Groves, 1 versus 3. We don't allow that to go ahead because 2 in the middle was Gilberto Ramirez, who wasn't doing anything. People were still complaining. That doesn't happen. Canelo's not Ring magazine super middleweight champion right now. You need to get the belt into circulation when it suits. Like I say, there's fights where it doesn't work, and Joshua Parker was an example of that, but 9 times out of 10 we'll get it right.
Do you ever get any beef, Tom, for promoters
or
fighters
beef all the time
regarding the rankings? I'm not asking you to throw anybody under the bus.
I could have a blast. But I could have a blast. But yes. Yeah, you'll get times where, oh, how did this happen, and why is this person ranked here, and why is the belt on the line in this fight, but it wasn't on the line in that fight? Yeah, I've had it. Not for a while. Not for a while though.
How does the rankings work with the board, Tom? Is there a kind of groupies that make that decision, or how does it all work? How do you get the rankings?
There's a ratings panel, probably about a dozen, but they don't always contribute. I think you probably end up with 8 opinions at the weekend, and it's just done democratically. So if, for example, fighter A gets voted in, you know, say 8 people vote, fighter A gets voted to go into the number 2 slot by 5 people, you'll go into the number 2 spot. That spot. I think sometimes I have like showdowns on Twitter where people think it's me that's slotting them in and out. But I don't get my way often.
Yeah.
A lot. Like, you know, I wanted Josh Taylor pound for pound top 10 when he beat Pro Gray, and it was initially declined, and I was aghast by that. And then it ended up kicking off later when Josh, I think he'd just beat Kong Sang, and I brought it up again because what happened was Taylor never went in, and then Charlo had a good win. I think both Charlos had good wins, and it was like, oh, put Charlo in pound for pound. I'm like, how can you? You just not back Josh Taylor, and his win's better. And we ended up in this like, just holding position where nobody was going in the pound for pound list, and it got reconfigured, and you need to do that sometimes. And I stand by with 100% certainty that we've got the best rankings in world boxing. That's a fact. Have we made mistakes? Yes, and I've been complicit in it. You know, there's times where I've ballsed it up, but for more often than not, our ratings will embarrass governing body ratings because it's just not happening a lot of the time. At
Ring Magazine, mate, you do some amazing projects. You touched on the Four Kings there, the Sugar Ray Robinson editions, but the one that really stuck out for me was the Mike Tyson edition, mate. It was absolutely fantastic. You've obviously got your contributing writers like your Tris Dixons, your Dan Raphaels. How good is it when these guys bring their piece to the table as well and you all work together as a team?
Without the, you know, I believe, you know, the best in boxing writing in the world, I think. Without that, you've got nothing. And you get a sense of what writer suits what project. You just get a sense of that because you know that there's some writers, I'm not getting myself into trouble here, right, but some writers will have more of a historical knowledge, right? Yeah. That's just a fact. Yeah. Some writers will have it more upstairs with what's going on in the here and now, just because of who they're speaking to, right? So you need to be able to judge that. And also, as well, like the Tyson edition, Gatty Ward as well, Nigel Collins, who's a former editor of Ring Magazine, we got Nigel involved because he was there. Like he'd done Gatty Ward, right? You're not going, you cannot beat that. If you've got that level of intimacy where he can remember not just the fight, but he can remember sitting there filling his report in when like, the chairs are getting put away at ringside. There's no point getting someone who wasn't getting me to do it. Like when that issue got compiled, I actually told Doug, I don't want to contribute to that because could I have contributed something that people would want to read? Yes, but is it the best thing to put in that magazine? No, we can do better than that because we can get guys that were there. So that's the important part of getting the right writer. Going
back to Mike Tyson, what was your first encounter like with Mike Tyson? Did you have to contact him for any content or anything like that? You get him on the phone or anything? What was that like?
There's two ways to answer this. I'll start with a joke first, if you don't mind. But I met Mike Tyson. Can you remember he was at a weigh-in and a fan put his arm around him and he elbowed this fan? Can you remember that?
Yeah.
It was the Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather weigh-in that happened.
That's right, aye.
So we're talking about that, and I was over in Vegas for that, and we're walking through Caesar's Palace, and he just walks out of shop. Aye. Mike Tyson, me and the lads there. It was like The Hangover. It was actually the lads met him first, and I'd went to another shop, and as I'm coming back down, like they're chalk white.
Aye.
And I'm like, what is it? And they're like, you have no idea who's in that shop. And I'm like, tell me. And they're like, Mike Tyson. And I said, we need to get him. And one of my mates said, Charlie just tried it and fumbled his phone and dropped it, and Tyson's gave him the brush off. You're wasting my time. So I said, look, I'll get him. Just let's wait here.
Aye.
So I'm like Mike Tyson's known for having like a crazy side, but he's not going to turn around and slug some bald kid from Scotland. So like, the worst they can say is no. So I went up and we got a photo taken with him, and you know, it wasn't. I wouldn't say he was friendly. Friendly enough to get the photo taken, right? But it was funny as we walked away, because in Vegas, if there's celebrities around, people get a sense of it and start approaching. So as we walked away, there's 10 people coming up to him to join in, but it was all women, and he couldn't get the smile off his face. Never smiled for us, but he smiled. He smiled for the women that walked up. But I got a hold of his PR for that issue. In fact, no. The issue before that, can you remember the one we done like a fantasy fight cover with Tyson Fury and him?
Yep.
That's the first time I'd spoken to Mike Tyson, and I did a greatest hits on him, I think, for that. And he was brilliant. And I also spoke to him about Tyson Fury, and he ended up getting in depth. He's one of the best people you can speak to for like historical knowledge, like knows the sport backwards, gives you stories on Jack Johnson and Joe Louis and Tommy Burns, right? Like you bring Tommy Burns up to like your average boxing fan, you know, they'll think it was Tommy Burns that played for Celtic at one time. They'll not have a clue what you're talking about, right? So this amazing knowledge, and like the first time he met Sugar Ray Robinson, right, at the '84 Olympics, which he didn't qualify for, like sitting ringside, and Robinson told him, just always stay in the gym, and Tyson was that pumped off the conversation, he went out and ran 10 miles.
Aye.
That can just great stories like that. It was brilliant, and he's always had that side of him, because back in his Customato days, he was just a sponge for knowledge. And then the second time was for the Tyson special that we did. He's great to speak to, and you need to count your blessings with that, because you don't know if you're ever going to get doing it again.
You just mentioned there that you spoke to him about Tyson Fury. What was you saying about Tyson Fury?
Tons of respect there. I mean, I think that the very fact that Tyson's named after him is just, that's your icebreaker right there.
Yeah.
The fact that he's a boxer, plus we're saying that Tyson's got a bit of a wild side. Both Tysons have got a wild side. I think they just hit it off, right? I get quotes of both of them talking about each other and just kind of interweaved it.
Yeah.
And let it try and tell a story, and it get great feedback. So yeah, there's a lot of respect between both of them. That's not to say Mike Tyson's also got tons of respect for Anthony Joshua. I think if it's great fighters or great heavyweights that went on to, kind of carry the torch, Tyson's always got time for that. He won't enjoy heavyweights that don't turn him on in any way, that are no use, but he likes those guys.
What's the best fight you've covered, Tom?
Inoue Donaire. Not only because I could have covered that, I could have covered that in Glasgow. I actually did cover Inoue in Glasgow, now that I think about it, against Rodriguez, but yeah, I don't see that ever being matched. I honestly felt, I went over there and was just happy to be in Saitama to see Inoue and Donaire, to see the fight, but I expected Inoue to blast him out. And given that I've watched Donaire for the majority of his 20-odd year career, I like to say to myself, I should have known better. I just felt that boxing's often about timing. He was past his mid-30s. This kid looks like he could punch a hole through a bus. He's in Japan. There's just that much going against him. And I was sitting at ringside, and honestly, I've seen great fights, but I was absolutely blown away. And I remember looking around the arena between rounds thinking, can't feel too much different than what the likes of your Colin Harts or your Jeff Powells or any of the guys did, watching the Four Kings. And I'm serious about that. The quality of that fight, the style confrontation, what they both took, the ebb and flow, the atmosphere of it, like press row were sitting with their mouths open. I don't like to say to people you had to be there, but you actually did. You can only pick up so much off Sky Broadcasting. Shout out to my man Chris Lloyd and Dan Barker. They covered it and done an amazing job. But they did that in a studio, which I like to wind Chris up about. But to be there, to see that, I don't think anything can replace it.
Donaire just picked up the WBC belt last week, a tremendous win over Ubali. Do you believe you will see Inoue and Donaire go at it again?
Yep, I do. I mean, I'm trying to secure an interview with Inoue, and I don't know if I'm going to get that, which is unfortunate, but we've got quotes from Nonito for the next magazine. He is targeting that fight, like proactively going after it. Inoue now has had what? So he's had Jason Maloney in the fight previously. He's got Das Marinas coming up. He needs, with all due respect to the challenger, I expect Inoue to win that fight. He needs something major league standout. How much hotter can Inoue Donaire 2 be than it is if he comes through that fight?
I loved that fight, but I felt Donaire rocked him, Tom. He can be hurt. He's a tremendous
He absolutely
fighter.
did.
But they go at it again. We're in for an absolute barnstormer.
I think so. I thought that fight in Saitama was kind of like Donaire's Manila. It was over, right? And we weren't that far away now that you think about it. I thought it was going to be over, and I thought Ubali was the kind of style that would trouble him.
Yeah.
And to see him perform again at that level, he's magic. So, and I mean this, I'll be picking Inoue to win the fight, right? But the door will be wide open. No, I'm not going to say that Inoue's going to blast him out this time. I'm just saying, no, I am done writing off Nonito Donaire.
Will you be hoping to go to that fight, Tom, if Ring put you to it?
I don't need to answer that, right? You know. Yeah. But I'm not, I doubt it. It's not. I think because Top Rank have got Inoue, I think that fight would go down on US soil. Yeah. And we've got too many good writers. I've had it. Don't write me off putting on a credit card. The only thing is, if Doug Fisher's listening, I'm not going to do any work while I'm there.
Is there a job in boxing that you've wanted that you've not had yet?
I would like to do a bit more TV stuff. My brother would say that I've got a face for radio. You know what that means. But you know, I've had a couple of good interviews with BBC.
You come across well, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
You do, mate.
Thanks,
you do, aye.
Thanks very much. People should be listening to this.
You done the one for Joshua, sorry to jump in there.
Yep.
Joshua
Pulev.
Yep. And you done it in BBC, mate, and not mate, good job, well done.
Yeah, and listen, it was after midnight by the time they phoned. I've done well. I get the fluff knocked off my head and shave, dress nice. And also I did a little piece for Chris Lloyd and his. I don't know if you watched the Carol Frampton material he did.
I've seen that. That was really good actually.
So I loved doing that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'd like to do more of that, but not branch out to do that exclusively. I think that I enjoy where I'm at.
Is there one fighter you've not interviewed yet you would like to interview? There must be one.
Oh no, there absolutely is. I've met Muhammad Ali, never interviewed him. Interviewed Joe Frazier, met Joe Frazier. Interviewed George Foreman, and missed Ken Norton because he passed. Right. So that's one. And I was actually trying to get Norton at the time when he passed away, which must be, I'm guessing, a decade ago anyway. And it's the same with the Four Kings. I've sat and interviewed Leonard, sat and interviewed Duran, interviewed Hagler when he was in Milan, and missed Thomas Hearns. I've been around Thomas Hearns, but not in a capacity to interview him. So that's the two that instantly jumped to mind. I'd like to get never interviewed Floyd Mayweather, seen him fight a couple of times, I'd love that interview. Never interviewed Manny, seen him fight, would love that interview. But would Floyd be a great interview? I think it depends. You need to get him in the right frame of mind, I think. But that's the ones that stand out.
You said you met Muhammad Ali. What was that like to be around a man of that aura?
That's one of the best days of my life.
Seriously?
No, not much that beats that. And ridiculously lucky because I was kind of like a Muhammad Ali obsessive by that point and had been for a couple of years, and he came to Glasgow with Howard Bingham, who was his photographer, and was signing off the 30-year journey, the book's called. It was just like photographs that Bingham had taken over the Ali era. It was funny. I came out of Glasgow Central Station, Waterstones it was at, and there's a queue of 40, but there's a turn, right? And I'm looking at it saying queue of 40, I'm like, I'll be out here in an hour. Turned the corner, and I swear it was a mile down the street, maybe just short of a mile, but no far off it. And this is like 10 in the morning, and I met Ali the back of 4.
What did he say to you?
Nothing. I just said to him, it's an honour to meet you, champ, and he just kind of nodded. Ill at the time.
Yeah.
Plus, exhausted.
Yeah.
Because he'd sat there all day and signed for people and stood up, sit down, stood up, sit down.
Yeah.
Tons of times when he's not, his health isn't where it's at the time.
Yeah.
But just to shake his hand, be around him, it's going to be in the top 5 best days of my life. That.
What fighters do you like hanging around with, Tom, or being around fight week, things like that?
I don't particularly. It's usually the guys that get down for full fight weeks. The videographer guys will get maybe more access than that. There's a lot of guys in boxing that I got on really well with, like Ricky Burns, a good friend of mine. I got on great with Josh, Anthony Crawler, But
good guys, mate.
Yeah, exactly. These are guys that you're going to struggle not to get on with. I'm a big fan of Tony Bellew.
The bomber.
Because, I would, and Carol Froch, I would interview them for like 15, 20 minutes and then sit on the phone and just talk about the kids for like a while. Like I remember Carol Froch telling me, what was it he said to me? It was a book that was out about how to get your kid to sleep. The 12 something, or I can't remember the name of the book. Like I was basically complaining because I couldn't get my oldest boy to sleep, and he said, buy this book, it'll sort it. He's fighting Kessler in 2 weeks. Yeah, so stuff like that. Like, so Carol's someone I can still phone and have a gab with, and I get on with all these guys. Carol Frampton, I'm a massive fan of Carol Frampton. Trainers, Joe Gallagher, someone that I like to speak to. But all of these guys, Smith brothers, I get on with all of them. It's no wise in my position to try and make enemies out of the people that I'm speaking to.
You touched on Carol Froch. One of my favourite fights with Carol Froch is when he fought Jermaine Taylor. You will never see a 12 round like that. I've not seen a round like that in a long time. He beat the clock to get the nod. He was unbelievable.
He's a warrior.
What a warrior. He was absolutely fantastic.
Well, let me tell you, we're going full circle here, right? So, what's interesting about you bringing that fight up?
It wasn't shown on a UK broadcasting
You're the
channel.
man. What does that remind you of?
Josh Taylor.
Yeah, and people still talk about that to this day.
I sent a tweet out about that, and only one person get back to me and says, you know what, mate, you're absolutely spot on there.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
The best fights, you always get robbed with a UK broadcaster not showing it.
Well, that's a struggle to go on fights of that magnitude. I struggle to think of many more involving a British fighter where that happened.
Oh,
Can you think of other ones?
No.
Right.
That
That's a standout though for Fortune Taylor.
Mm-hmm. In this era, Tom, a lot of fighters only fight twice a year. Do you believe that dents their legacy in the long run?
It doesn't dent their legacy if they're getting the right fights. Like Lomachenko, for example, has had what now? 14, 15, is it?
Yep.
He's probably Hall of Fame material, right? Probably. I know that. It's so funny because a year ago, Lomachenko, or I can't work out when the TO fight was. It was last year, right?
Yep, last year, yeah.
But he's superhuman then,
Yep.
right? And then because you come round to now and he's taking an L in a close fight, your whole perspective kind of changes. But if you look at what he did, winning a world title in his third fight against Gary Russell, and moving up through the weights the way he did, and his performance level, and the guys he was going after, and what was it they were calling him? Like, I can't remember.
The Matrix.
Yeah, but something to do with fighters quitting. Nomaschenko, Nomaschenko, or whatever.
Because Rigondo basically quit against him, didn't he?
Yeah,
he did.
And by the way, I don't mean to boast because I never get fights right, but I called that.
Seriously?
I said he'd stop. I never said he'd quit. I said he'd stop him, and I won $50 off of Mike Cottinger for that.
That division is absolutely red hot, mate. I really think Lomachenko can come back and be the king again. It is a tremendous division. You've got the Haney, Lomachenko, Tank.
Yeah.
There's that team of
I think
field.
he's up at 140 for Barrios though, right?
Yeah, he'll come back then again. He's not a 140 pounder, Tank. There's no way. I don't think it's a hard fight. Will he get the job done? Yes, definitely. But I just think
Barrios is a hard fight. I am not 100% sure on Loma because, as in at lightweight with the sharks that are around him now, because if that fight, let's say for example that Teo was 130 pounds,
yeah,
and if the weights were more natural, I think Lomachenko would have took more chances than he did. I think he felt the power and strength coming off of Lopez. There was also talk of the injury, he had the shoulder and all that.
How that guy makes lightweight is beyond me. Timofeo Lopez, he is an absolute monster.
He is, he's young, you just get away with murder.
Yeah, 22,
right?
isn't he?
Just
22, 23,
maybe 23. But you get away with murder at that age.
Yeah.
It was the same with Canelo. So funny, like Canelo was doing the whole 155 catch weight, and I had it on authority. That's back then. So many years are we going back? That must be 5 years ago when he was doing 155. And I had it on authority that Canelo was performing at his best in the gym between super middle and light heavy. Where is he now? And people were laughing when he moved up to middleweight. And I'm like, you've got this all wrong. That's where he should be in the first place. People saying that he shouldn't be in the ring with Golovkin and all the rest of it. When you're young, you get away with murder. So that's 5-6 years ago. Yeah, he's in his mid-20s. You get away with murder on the scales. So yeah, and Lopez is the same, but he'll end up coming up. I don't know how high his ceiling will be. Josh as well. Josh Taylor is making 140 relatively comfy. He'll make a good welterweight, but he'll be, in his words, a middle-sized welterweight. He'll not be a huge welterweight, he'll not be a small welterweight, which probably means his ceiling is welterweight. He said that he could come up to 154, but it would have to be like, I don't know, they'd have to resurrect Terry Norris in his prime or something.
I would love to see the Lopez-Taylor fight, mate. That is an absolute barnstormer, and I do favour Josh Taylor. I'm not just saying that because I'm Scottish. Timofeo's moving up. Josh is more seasoned at 140. I do believe Josh Taylor will beat him if they do cross paths.
Well, the only thing now is you've got Teo went to Triller, right?
Yep.
I don't know if
he's still under contract with Top Rank.
Top Rank, yeah. He's not fully under the umbrella, but it'll just be interesting to see how up for making life nice and easy.
Yeah, because that was a mandatory fight to take a Kambosos fight, wasn't
Yes.
it? And he went to purse bids. Triller won the purse bid, but he is still a top rank fighter. And Josh's a top rank fighter. Crawford's a top rank fighter. There's some absolute spellbinding clashes to invade there, Tom.
There is. I think the Crawford fight is the one that you're going to end up seeing in the long term, maybe late next year.
The question I want to ask you, Tom, is do we get those fights back at Edinburgh? We need a big one back here. We couldn't get Bruno over for Ricky. Can we get somebody over for Josh?
I honestly don't think that Terence Crawford will travel to Scotland.
Yeah.
Right. He's been over here for Ricky.
That's
the way
right.
he'll look at it is, I've done my bit when I was the challenger. I mean, and the thing is, and I'm going to speak for Josh here, which can be dangerous, but I think Josh would allow, he'd have to, because he'd be fighting for Crawford's title. Crawford's going to be the A side, and if you're the A side, how often are you turning around and saying, right, I'll take the flight to Glasgow Airport?
It's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. I think that Jack Catterall is a fight that they should aim for Edinburgh, if not the Castle in Easter Road.
Yep, 20,000 in there as well. We can get in there.
Yep,
pay-per-view as well.
The only thing is, I think Josh, I don't know if he needs a break because he's piping fit, but I think he wants a break and wants to enjoy his win.
Yep.
So then, with the Scottish weather, I mean, even if you put it in June or July, which is impossible, you're still risking the weather, but you're risking it a lot more if you stretch that out to August, September, and into early October.
I seen you at Josh's house the other day and that, obviously catching up with him and that. And was he cutting the grass and drinking a can of cider?
He was.
Did you not get a few beers with him? Trying to go on a mad one?
I couldn't. I'd driven up to.
Get the missus to pick you up.
No. I'd driven up to Edinburgh, and I just no. It was cool. It just shows you how laid back he is. Yeah, out trimming the hedges, and he'd cut the grass and a can of cider, and he deserves it.
Was he in good form, Tom?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, he's good. He's good. Josh is always good unless you're around him in fight week, because then it's, you need to watch yourself. You need to be at arm's reach, because he is. I've said about him, and it works for him. A lot of fighters put their game face on in fight week. He puts his on when he signs a contract. And I said that to him, and he said, that works.
I just want to see him get the big pay-per-view fights, because he deserves them.
I said that, I mean, I'm 46, and that's never happened in my lifetime. Like an undisputed champion from Scotland. So it was marvellous to see that, you know, for someone in the way he's went about it, and, you know, proactively chased every single title holder to he was the man, and he accomplished what he wanted to do. It's a great thing.
I've always said it, Tom, he's a very, very smart man. I've said it for day one, he's very, very smart.
He knows what he's doing, that's for sure.
Just on to the AJ Fury one now, mate. We were so close. At the 11th hour, the bronze bomber dropped that big bomb on it. It was a court arbitration from a judge. What did you make of the whole situation?
I was taking heat on it today because I said 8 months ago that the fight wouldn't happen.
Did you call this, aye?
No. I did anything but call it. I didn't think you would get Fury Wilder 3. For a couple of reasons. One, we've seen it twice and we know who the better fighter is. Two, after the beating that Wilder got last time, I didn't think he'd fancy it. And I thought Wilder would want to build his confidence back up. But no, and listen, hats off to Deontay Wilder for taking him on again, for getting back in the ring with someone that essentially gave him a pasting.
Yep.
I don't think it's the smartest decision. I don't think it's what boxing needed. I think boxing needed Fury, Joshua. I think everyone did.
All the belts are in Britain, mate. Why is this fight not happening? Eddie Hearn says the whole situation.
Well, it's not happening this time because Deontay Wilder won a court arbitration, so we know why it's not happening this time. But I didn't expect
to see that coming.
No, because the amount of lawyers that were in play between Top Rank and the networks and the promoters, you know, someone I would have imagined, and Bob Arum had a legal career before he was a boxing promoter, right? So what you're looking at here, the threat must have been pretty massive, but there's a lot of, like anything in boxing now, there's so many conspiracy theories that Bob Arum knew it was going to happen from the get-go and just wanted to mess Eddie around and make Eddie rack up air miles and rah. A lot of crap, right? The bottom line is we've got Fury Wilder 3 and by the looks of it, Joshua Usyk. And what I think you need to hope for is that the boxing gods aren't looking down going, sorry, you guys have wasted enough time, and, you know, Wilder lands the cartoon punch on Fury and knocks him out and Joshua gets outboxed with Usyk. Because then the fight's dead. You're just not dead, but you're starting to... Remember they used to talk about Kell Brook and Amir Khan was multi-million... Yeah, but that can happen here.
Yep.
You know, Joshua's already got a loss to Andy Ruiz, avenged it in style. It lost a touch of substance there, but not enough to prevent it from being a multi-million. But another defeat for either one of them, there's going to start being a hit on it.
Speaking of AJ Fury, does all this drama dent the revenue of the fight down the line, or does it make it bigger?
If they both win, it makes it bigger.
Colossal.
Yeah, because here's the funny thing about it, right? Like, you would have to say that Fury Wilder is a defining fight for Tyson Fury, but see, even if Deontay lands the circus punch, right? Are you convinced that Deontay Wilder is the better fighter?
No, he's absolutely. It's a boxing.
Which has to make you ask yourself why it's happening just by inference. There's never been a matchup like this where one fighter has been so dominant and you just keep going back. You know, and there will be someone out there that lasts for fight 4 if Wilder loses again. Big. It's insane. But if Tyson wins that, he's bigger.
Yeah.
Not much, because he's big anyway. And if Joshua beats Usyk, which I think is a tough fight, technically, he's getting bigger. And Joshua is massive as well. So, yeah, they need to both win. And I think, ideally, they need to look really, really good doing it.
There's a good saying in life, Tom, money talks. There is always a number. Could Deontay Wilder have took a big, massive step aside for you to let that fight happen, AJ versus Fury?
It could. I mean, I've heard of, I think there was talk of between 5 and 8 million. I can't remember the source. Then you start talking about, you should have gave him 20 million. That's a lot of coin for doing absolutely nothing. I mean, I remember back in the day, it doesn't get mentioned too often, but in order for Mike Tyson to get the go-ahead to fight Evander Holyfield, the Tyson camp gave Lewis $4 million.
Back then, that's big bucks.
Big bucks then, but it's not the equivalent of 20 million now, or like people were saying, give him 50 million, and you're like, come on, like, really? 5 to 8 million, let Deontay Wilder get a good fight on the undercard, and I guarantee of facing the winner. But then, I'll tell you where I think it goes wrong as well, is trying to make it undisputed. It doesn't matter a damn. It doesn't matter what belts are on the line. It's transcended all that now. I find this so ridiculously frustrating. You need a couple of titles. You need to be able to say it's a world title fight. Networks will insist on that.
Yeah.
But do you really need the whole undisputed thing going on? Not anymore. If it was easy to do the way, it's not been easy for Josh, but Josh kind of floated fight to fight and did one mandatory here and there, and has been able to bounce, seamlessly across it.
Absolutely.
That's not possible here. Dillian White is due a WBC title shot. He's going to be chasing it, and listen, he deserves it. I know that people are down on Dillian White, but he was overdue a title shot by the time he fought Povetkin the first time, got beat, he's come back, avenged it. Then you're going to end up with probably a WBA mandatory will be coming up, and it's just changing that much that I don't think it needs to be undisputed anymore. I'm lost with it all.
I'm a big fan, right? And I think these guys are in their prime. Are we at risk of not seeing the best AJ fight the best Tysons?
We're not at risk of that. We're at risk of one of them losing, and the event being tarnished, and we've seen it before. Even right down to, and listen, you can regurgitate it and amp it up again. That's what a promoter's for. They managed it with Mayweather Pacquiao. That, we discussed it earlier. What did Floyd make on that? The best part of 300 million. Manny walked away with a measly 105 million or whatever it was. Everybody bought it. It was the most successful fight in history. But when it came around, it wasn't the fight that we wanted to see. And Pacquiao had been splatted by Marquez, knocked cold. Whereas if the fight had been made before then, it was probably had a bit more juice, and Floyd would get a bit more credit for the victory. You're risking the two of them. I think the two of them have got dangerous assignments. I mean, people won't believe me when I say that, because I'm usually down on the matchup between Fury and Wilder, but I'm not insane enough to think to myself that there's no way Wilder can win. If he hits literally any human being alive with the right hand on a target area, it can end the fight. Right? So you can't say he's got no chance. The odds are massively against him, but you can't say he's got no chance. And similarly, if you look at Usyk, pedigree-wise, amateur career, skill-wise, undisputed champion, this is a big threat for Anthony Joshua. I'm going to pick Joshua, I think, to win it, because I believe him and Robert McCracken, who I rate very highly, can design a game plan that gives Joshua the advantage, because he's just a naturally bigger man, right? But I'm not writing off Alexander Usyk winning that fight in a million years.
World Boxing Super Series winner, as you say, is undisputed. The guy's good at all. I'm going to go against you, mate. I fancy Usyk.
You fancy Usyk? Well, I know other people that do, and I could conceivably change, but all I will say is, if I do pick Anthony Joshua, it will be with trepidation, because, and it's not that, Usyk's hungry for it.
Definitely.
Like, very, very, very hungry for it. He's moved aside and said, all right, I'll take on Joyce and all the rest of it. Then that all backfired, and him and his manager went insane and goes, no, I want you right now. Like, they're chasing him out, so dangerous fight for both of them.
That's us today, Tom. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
I wish you nothing but health, success and happiness in the future. God bless.
You too.
Thanks,
man.
Cheers.